All right, Johnny Klein, energy healer. And dude, your work is so unique, bro, because you're so grounded and so
Mm.
non-woo-woo, and you operate so effectively in the realms of what could be considered esoteric, to be polite, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's something okay, I hate this phrase, my superpower, but I do think that I have this ability to relate to people. Um, and I grew up in a pretty conservative county in California, and so I know a lot of different kinds of folks. And I just, I try to stay grounded. I try to stay real. These are really interesting times we're in. Just hold on, baby, for the ride. It's
Yeah, we picked a good time to incarnate. Oh man, dude, one thing I see with clients, and I've just been going deeper into this, is, and Vortex does it, the dimensions of one's being, where,
yeah,
it's all one, but then there's kind of an appropriate
yeah,
delineation of a mental body, a spiritual body, a
yeah,
karmic body into
yeah,
the physical body.
yeah,
And I guess with that, man, one thing that you just, you work with people, you advertise it is working on physical issues from the energetic and spiritual vantage point. And the way that I see it, man, it's just, it seems like that just since that predisposes all manifestation, that is the initial impetus for physical ailments.
yeah, yeah.
How do you see it?
That's a nice frame. I think, I'm not sure, everyone's gonna be coming from where they're at. And trying to meet a person wherever they're at and whatever they can kind of take in is crucial. And if there's any way that I can sort of allow people just to start with their own physical condition and let that be the gateway or the doorway to a greater peace, to spirit, however they want to define that for themselves, however they feel connected to that, because those higher dimensions you're talking about, ultimately it's kind of getting my little individual Johnny, a kind of a flat two-dimensional version of myself out of the way. And then tapping that when you talk about the cosmos or the spirit or some kind of greater power, like that's the thing that wants to flow through me unimpeded. And my own thoughts about it, my own, karmic history around it, my genetic, my my parents, my ancestors, all of those, they're going to put up little, blockages or fears or, you know, however I might think about that greater power and relate to it, connect it, touch it, feel it. Um, I'm just going to try to, clear this individual guy or an individual client and just help them be that bridge to that greater spirit, to that presence, that essence that can flow through them quite beautifully if they just relax and let it happen. And it's not easy, it's not easy to relax. It really isn't. And to appreciate whatever little contractions or tension patterns, fight that relaxation or resist that relaxation. Like truly appreciate those because those will be the little, guideposts. Those will be the little signs that will open you up. If you don't fear, like, oh my God, I've got this fear in my first chakra, or I've got this tension pattern in my belly, and it's like, well, no, that's the starting point. Be
Yeah,
there, love it, explore it, be curious about it.
not judge where you're at. Yeah, dude, I actually had some kind of like just a solemn moment where I'm like, helping people, and it's gotten better and better and more effective ability to help people. And I'm like, It's really not me. Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
not me. These
yeah,
words are just
yeah,
preloaded. That's not me. And I
yeah,
thought,
yeah.
and then my ego felt a little mopey. I was like, damn, dude, all this work for it not to be
Shoot. Can I take
me.
some credit for this? Yeah, no, absolutely. But like celebrate your effort, your work, our work, like we're all on this together. And individually, what can you do? Well, explore where am I tense? Where am I afraid? Clear my energy field as best as possible and try to align with it and then resonate with that with others. Um,
Johnny, you've gone so deep into this, dog. Sorry.
he's like, come on, play with me. Stop this video
Oh,
stuff.
that's funny. Johnny, you've gone so deep. Was there ever a point where you said, like, oh no, too deep or something? I think
Mm,
for my own journey, I took Western therapy, like blended with some Vedic,
mm,
past life healing as far as I could take
mm.
it, and it plateaued. And then I was like, uh-oh,
Yeah.
like, uh-oh, I've gone too deep into my own psyche and into my own
Mm.
karma for the average Western modality to help.
Yeah.
And I was kind of left just like splashing about, floundering.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just curious about what your journey has been. You've gone
Yeah.
so deep. Um, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty great. I mean, I think starting with, okay, I'm a little kid, and I feel a little different than others. I feel a little bit like I'm interested in something that others aren't really talking about that much. I don't have words for it, but it's like, it's just like there's some kind of other experience out here that seems loving and would be a good thing if we could get more people in touch with it. And that's just little kid stuff. And there's probably lots of kids that feel that way. And I've taught and worked with kids. Um, I just to kind of maybe keep it the short version, I was in college. I got accepted to a PhD program, political science, very kind of really good at school, academia. And my last quarter of college, I took a creative elective, a mime class. And the only reason I didn't take the acting class is I was terrified of speaking in front of people. So I took mime. And the first experience I had was in our very first exercise in class. I just was behind the stage curtain and I thought, whoa, there's something. This is touching that other. This is touching that presence of something I never had words for. Okay, fast forward, I graduate. I don't go to graduate school. I study acting. My first acting teacher is a student of the Diamond Approach, Hamid Ali, the Ridwan Foundation, which is here in the Bay Area. And he's like, John, you have a connection with this. You should explore this. So I spent 5 years of really intense work with them. So that's like yearly retreats, monthly weekend meetings, bi-weekly small groups, and individual one-on-one work. And that was getting at all of my really deep, deep shit.
Yeah.
And the only thing that got me through that really in terms of a faith, Chris, was trusting my teacher. Couldn't have done it without it. And to be honest, there were some things where, you we're all human karmic beings and our teachers have karma. And you got to navigate through that stuff. And it's not always pretty. It's not always smooth,
Yeah.
but it does awaken in you, a kind of a trust in yourself. And what I learned was I can trust spirit. Like whatever this force is that's leading me through, sometimes very dark places, dark holes in the psyche. And then there was always a grace. There was always, even if it was bumpy or rocky or took some time to integrate. And I ended up leaving the Diamond Approach, moved to New York City, pursued acting there. Uh, And then a very, dramatic event led me to vortex healing. And had that dramatic event not happened, I wouldn't be here. It was terrifying, it was horrible. But it led me to a vortex healer. And the change was so immediate and drastic and outside of my realm, even though I thought I'd seen a lot of realms, that I had to believe it. I had to trust it, and explore it and be curious about it. So that's what led me to becoming a energy healer.
Oh wow, that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Did you ever, are there, you said like spirits always there. There's a silver lining even in the worst of the worst, right? Like the terrible things lead us in a way. Oh my goodness, Chewy, you are on one. The
Who is
terrible,
that?
this is Chewy, Chimundi.
Chamundi.
Chewy girl for short. Hey baby.
Chewy.
She is on one today. Yeah, you're looking
Yeah, she's
so
she's
good until it's time to hit record. And it's like, let's destroy everything. Hey baby. Okay.
she's the dog version of my cats. I'm like, starting some really serious kind of like group healing, and then boom, one of my cats jumps out and walks across the computer. It's like bonk in my face.
I know, man. I wonder what this is teaching me
Yeah,
because I think last one she did this too. And normally I'm meditating. She's like, yeah, let's just chill.
yeah.
Baby girl. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm gonna roll with that. Man, so, dude, there's always a silver lining in the beauty of it. Is there like, I was just wondering, something that, affirmed your faith? Is there ever an example of Amma intervening, spirit intervening,
Mm.
Merlin's grace intervening that's like, dang, I can't, like, I want to argue this, maybe the
Yeah.
doubting parts, but it's kind of irrefutable.
Well, I mean, let's just try an example. So let me just connect with your dog for a moment and just see
Okay.
if it's grace that might just help her relax. And who knows, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But I mean, the animals are great, and they just they just pick up on energy, and it's and like apropos our conversation, I think there's just some it's just a lot of excitement and energy and a little bit of fear, like what we would call the first chakra. And really, who knows why, you know? Um, but maybe there's an element to the conversation or the energy that just, you know, inspires a little bit of fear.
It's just comically perfect, bro. And as that settles the dog, I can feel her settle.
And, you know, in our human equivalent, that fear of the unknown, of darkness, of being lost, kicked out, abandoned. Uh, you mentioned fitting in at one point. Um, we're social creatures, we don't want to get kicked out, and I'm sure we've all had tons of past lives where we got kicked out of everything. Um, or even deeper still, maybe annihilated, you know. Um, and I think, when you mentioned, like keeping it real or like connecting with people, I think just each of us remembering that there's nowhere we're really going, and you know, here's my beautiful body, you know, here's my breath. Um, here's my level of spiritual evolution in this moment. Here's my obstacles, here's my struggle. Um, but I'm back here with my body, my breath, a glass of water, um, you know, touchstone in the real world. Um, and that there's no pressure for me to, because there's no pressure, the only pressure is me putting on myself to get somewhere, you know, and be better or be more spiritual or realize something. And this self-compassion that kicks in is a real love of your physical form here and now. And I'm divinity. And here's Alma just reminding us, like, guess what? We can be divinity.
Mm.
And you think for a moment that divinity wants to harm us, wants to, yes, suffering is going to happen. And it can also awaken some beautiful fires and some capacities and skills in me I had no idea I had, and that for me, certainly when I've had my first few vortex healing sessions and then decided to take that beginning class, you know, I had this experience, I think in the fourth or fifth day of class where the teacher said, okay, so let's channel some energy to the to the liver. And it was as if this 4-inch wide beam of energy just poured out of my heart, turned around, and went straight into the liver. As real as I'm holding this glass of water, as real as my own arm. And I was like, whoa, like that's physical. And I can do this? Are you kidding me? Everybody should be able to do this. And in fact, they can in their own way, or what their own practices, And every step of the way since that moment where there's been moments of doubt or fear or struggle, um, or I've been side blasted, not even seeing something coming. Um, I just come back to the physical, to the body. Like I get to have this experience. I get to have the whole thing, and
Oh, man, I'm wiping tears here, dude. My dog is now peacefully laying on the bed. It's
nice,
just so beautiful. Thank you
nice.
for
Yeah,
settling that layer, man.
yeah,
I feel like I'm supposed to do something, with
yeah,
my life. I'm
yeah,
supposed to do something.
yeah,
And and then the window of translating, I think, all that richness of
mm,
meditation and from all the spiritual, everything contacted in meditation and energy healing, like then to translate that into the material is where
yeah,
the greatest, I think, for me,
yes.
challenge lies.
Yeah, well, and also I totally 100% agree with you. That I think is our greatest challenge. And just in the simplest moments, like you're reaching out to me, like us having this material conversation on the technology that is Zoom, given the channel of, the container that is YouTube. Like this is an opportunity for us to take that spirit, thanks to you in this moment and just bring it to a very physical place that even includes a little bit of love and healing for your dog. Like that's like pretty cool.
Yeah. And my state that was riling the puppy. Sorry,
Yes.
girl.
All
Let me
right.
be accountable here. That
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's not that's not your behavior. And I love it, Max. This is always where I try to point clients of like, it's gonna be showing something. So thank
Yeah.
you, man.
Yeah.
It's totally not about Chewy. She is the perfect dog. She just feels my stuff at times. Oh, wow. That
Mm.
I mean, working deeply, man, with Kush on that relationship to the material and
Yeah.
the material plane, and goodness, I think the
Yeah.
fear that like if I succeed, I'm going to lose my true self
Yep.
in it, and
Yep. Yep.
that seems to be updating. And then like there's this crazy like awareness, dude, of like spirit being not just outside of matter, but the intelligence that it's prior to the manifestation of
Mm,
matter, like
mm,
moving like at
mm.
that imperceptible speed of
Yeah.
knowing, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then like I don't know if this happens in Vortex, man, but it feels like to some degree that grace and thy will is starting to move. It's starting to crack open some of the
Mm,
seams
mm.
of literally like energetic dimensions, somewhat energetic dimensions, physical, like,
Yeah.
whoa, that wants to
Yeah.
crack. And
Yeah.
that's big. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you experienced anything or in those
I mean,
lines?
the closest I have to that, or I think to what you're touching here is, you know, either a moment to moment experience of, say, being with Alma, or the stories I hear of other divine beings, where, that capacity of the divine with its infinite intelligence to know everything and to kind of almost like, like pre-know it.
Yeah.
And the dance of everything that is so intimately connected, and for all of those things to be happening at the same time, for some kind of grace to go bloop, here's your train ticket, which, there are 37 rational reasons why I shouldn't have just found my train ticket, and those very real stories, those very real happenings, um, you know, that's it's beyond us. But it helps me, or it helps the reader, when we read those stories or hear those stories, or if we're lucky enough to witness them firsthand, you know, it's like, oh, yes, there's just remembering there. And noticing in myself, if and when I'm not hearing those stories or seeing them, that's a little invitation for me to just look at my own faith, my own doubt, my own cynicism, um, and and appreciate that doubt. Just be curious about it and not like blindly go, oh, because spirit said so, blah, blah, blah. Just, you know, being accountable and responsible for every choice I make. And, you know, essentially like praying to God, like that there are a lot of things out of my control. But um those stories of individuals being cared for or touched or healed in very direct ways matter.
Yeah, man. I can just feel this thing. It's like it's like, dude, there's like with divinity source, that infinite, we can't, intelligence doesn't do it justice because my
Yeah,
mind explodes if I try to
yeah,
understand it. But that infinite intelligence always being one step ahead. It's like,
yeah,
dude, what a safety net of love, right?
yeah,
If I
yeah,
can be
yeah,
there, and
yeah.
then we get to practice it through
Right.
the
Yeah.
outer world and
I think one little word that helps me with it's right there in or next to the intelligence is responsiveness, like a divine responsiveness, that's like, because it has that, touch quality, it has that physical love, um, if and when needed. And yeah, it doesn't always come in the right way I want it to come, or it doesn't show up in the moment, or like really tough things happen to me or my loved ones or whole groups of people as we can see in the world right now. It's really tough. And you don't maybe know the divine purpose or reason for some of this stuff. Um, but again, that's kind of a trust or faith and just being curious and not taking anything for granted. And realizing my human mind is trying to understand divine's intelligence. um so when there is some responsiveness that's immediate or felt or witnessed, I mean, that's just pure grace right there.
Dude, do you ever feel maybe out of sync with the world? Like your perceptive abilities, right? We can see like something internally in me, an anxiety of going into matter, upsets the dog. So,
Yeah.
external dog training classes aren't required to resolve that. Right? I would need to shift something internally. Thank you for your help with that. Do you ever feel like out of sync with society, knowing that like people's unconscious karma is looping them in the
Yeah.
patterns that they're not turning in to see?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Constantly, daily, within every hour. I mean, a- and just again, that's like a teacher, it's just here we are, we're in class, it's live 24/7, lesson, 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 lesson. And I think for me, and that getting back to that kid place I was telling you about, seeing cruelty to animals or other people, um, and really looking at that Jesus quote, like the meek shall inherit the earth. And I had this rabbi who said, it's actually more like the sensitive shall inherit the earth. That's the actual Aramaic translation.
Whoa.
Not the Greek, the sensitive shall inherit the earth. And if you think of that, like if and when we are sensitive, we do inherit everything. I mean, heaven and earth. Like the more subtle your perception are, the more relaxed you are, the more your physical organism is capable of perceiving and embodying all that is. You've in that moment inherited everything. You've inherited the earth. Um, and so it's really tough when people are cruel or physically, purposefully seeming they know not what they do. Um, it's hard, and yet, okay, I'm in this time. Whatever this time is, like for me, I'm this being, I've been sensitive since I was a kid. Um, and it pains me to see. It pains me when I act out in shit, you know. It's it's painful, but classroom, teaching, student, like here I am. So that
Yeah,
helps.
man, like I think Swami Paramatmananda said like his one of his stories about brawl breaking out at Amma's
Mm.
ashram, like in the early
Wow.
days. And
Yeah.
after Amma's like, search the corners of your mind, to see why
Mm,
this happened. And
mm,
yeah, at first it didn't feel super effective. I was like, this is what we're doing, but
yeah.
and then we
Yeah.
kind of see like, oh my God, how truly effective the sensitivity and the internal sensitivity is. Oh man, it's just yeah, and it's such a
Well,
beautiful journey.
yeah, and speaking of her swamis, I was in a retreat in January with Flute Swami. He's the one that travels with Amma. I saw him in Oakland, where I saw you last summer, and he did a silent retreat, and he had a Q&A. It was online, which, you can find these wonderful opportunities online on Alma's website. It was a 3-day silent retreat. During the Q&A, I asked him, you know, seems to me like we're in a pretty challenging time. A lot of upheaval, uncertainty. How do we best align with the divine at this time? You know, and he said, well, the thing about uncertainty is, suspense. You don't know what's going to happen. And like, he just became like giddy and gleeful and kind of talking about how this time c- can awaken some of those capacities that never before would have been dreamt of, you know. I'd say I'm like opening myself up to that possibility that I might be called to do things or be able to do things I had no idea I could do 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And he told us a story about Amma where they went making a documentary. They went to her old school teachers and they asked all the teachers what was Amma like as a kid. And they all said a lot of different things, but they all said the same thing. No matter what classroom she was in, whenever the teacher scolded the class, like, somebody wrote this bad word on this chalkboard, who did it? And Amma would raise her hand immediately, and she would accept the punishment of whatever the teacher punished. And finally, all the teachers got together and they pulled Amma into the teacher's room and they're like, Amma, child, why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep? And she said, because I love it. I love taking on the suffering of others to relieve them of their suffering, you know? And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to relieve the suffering of the world. And there's no greater pleasure. She's like, I'm really happy when people are happy and their lives are materially good and everything's going fine. I'm happier when they're suffering because then I can take some of it and I can help them, And it's just like, oof, it's hard to, I mean, I guess it's more not hard, it's just beautiful to take in as an example, a living example.
Yeah, man. I have had like I've heard she speaks to the person at the part, like whatever, if she would say something, if you and I ask her the same questions, we probably get different answers, right?
Yeah,
Being at
yeah,
different places.
yeah,
So I've had to
yeah,
just like continually like reel myself back in. I'm like, Chris, that quote was for somebody just at a different stage, man.
yeah,
Probably don't take that advice and like
right,
full
right.
on,
Yeah,
full
right.
run with it,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah,
And yeah, man, I could like an avatar could like she could do that. I would might not get very far.
yeah. Well, and like I would just start, say, with my own personal suffering, where I'm unhappy or stuck in my life. And instead of judging that or kind of hating it or trying
Hmm.
to get better and get over it or through it, just like essentially love it, take it, like actually go in it and like, okay, if I could love myself and kind of ease some of that suffering in a real direct way, don't need to do anything else, like just start there.
And man, you have this ability to see what I found is the unconscious is the most, it's the power generation site of our surface level suffering.
Mm,
And
mm,
you've cultivated this ability to be more accurate in
mm,
your perception of the power
mm,
generation
mm,
site,
mm.
that
Yeah,
is churning out
yeah,
the things. I don't know if there's anything you feel relevant to share about that journey, man, but it's just such a gift. I mean, so many people need that gift.
yeah,
And there's
yeah,
obviously our human element of trusting other people in that, but you've
yeah.
cultivated it, dude, to a beautiful degree. Is there anything you care to share about that?
Well, it's funny. I was writing some stuff this morning. Just I get up in the morning. I just bleh, I just write. It's actually inspired by Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. morning pages, just first thing, 3 notebook pages, just let it all out. But that first acting teacher who connected me with the diamond approach, he said, John, you have a really unique bravery to you. And I didn't know what he meant at the time, but through Diamond Heart, um, I I learned to trust that, when I told you, like, what is going on? Where's the contraction in my heart, let's say? Okay, let's go in there and start where you're at. Start where the contraction, the fear, the pain, the struggle is. And then it's just like loving that, and then you go deeper inside, you go through it, and then that's the thing that's going to lead you to the unconscious places, to that generator, to the motivation, to like, well, so it's fear. Okay, well, what's the fear about? Oh, I don't want Chris to think I'm stupid, Oh, okay. So does that bring up any other fears or, memories? Or, oh yeah, I was in third grade and the teacher's throwing paste at me for, talking to my best friend, and I didn't know what she was asking. And whatever. But like you keep going and just loving that suffering, not trying to get rid of it or judge it, because that will tell me, oh, I'm doing X because I'm afraid of Y. Okay. Like there's some benefit I'm seeking by engaging in this repetitive behavior. Otherwise, I wouldn't keep doing it. So what is it? Oh, I don't want people to see that I think I'm stupid. Whatever the thing is. And but you can't in my mind, you can't really just jump at the dog's back. You can't just jump to the unconscious. Or I guess maybe you can. I'm sure there's lots of people that can do that. But for me, I'm much more interested in finding out what's going on in me, even if I don't get to the unconscious reason. Just really what's going on, and that first teacher, the founder of the Diamond Approach, Hamid Ali, used to say he would get excited whenever he had reactivity, whenever he had a contraction, because he'd be like, ooh, ooh, what's that? That's some place in me that's not yet free. And, he's the freest human being I've ever met, so freest karmic human being. So for him to explore, whatever, 99.9% of him is free, but like he's just constantly still curious about that 0.1% or less, right?
Yeah. And that's just, it seems like another point that isn't fully integrated in a lot of areas, man. And your approach really to me, hits the nail on the head of the linking between our psyche and our psychological healing and our spiritual transformation,
Yeah.
and how they're absolutely one and the same.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just read an
Beautiful.
Amma quote of saying, like, you need a Satguru to get rid of the last vasanas, the last unconscious tendencies. You need a
Mm,
God realized being that can take you all the
mm,
way. It's like the
mm.
human psyche's that stuck. And I see a lot of people that, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't link fully, man. But your approach has certainly linked it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think of all the creativity and all the art I've made in my lifetime since 1990, and my teachers, Grace, including some of the not so great, tendencies they expressed at times. Um, the grace of the Diamond Approach to kind of connect me with that, body, mind, spirit, um, and then vortex healing, and then who knows what else,
With that, bro, do you think there's an offshoot, man? Like, angel classes emerge out of vortex, or genetic classes? I mean, potentially like your kind of, I don't know, potential uniqueness. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think all of us are, you, me, anyone uh who's involved in helping not only ourselves but other beings, the planet, animals, plants, human beings. Um, I think we've probably all got some kind of massive toolbox at our disposal, and we're all just trying to best align ourselves to like, okay, what tool is needed now, and what what might be emerging that I don't quite yet see or embody fully, that's maybe a little bit more effective, a little bit more powerful, a little bit more direct, you know. And I mean, I'm certainly open to it. I mean, like you just keep working, but then there's like some, like getting back to Flute Swami, there's an element of suspense and like what's the ride gonna be like, like up, down, all around, and what might come,
I totally feel that childlike innocence, just like, ah, well, gotta trust the mother,
Yeah,
right? Gotta trust the
yeah,
source in that.
right, yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe that's a little bit of the bravery that my first acting teacher saw in me. I've gotten that refrain over the years in different, circumstances and environments where whether it's, doing some stand-up comedy or whatever else it was like, oh, you know, John Patrick Shanley, the playwright, screenwriter, he said, writing is acting, is directing, is living your life. And that quote's really stuck with me. And what he explained about it was he made he, the only time he ever made progress in any of those arenas was when he was a little bit more brave or courageous than he thought he was before. So if it was a life event or something to do with his writing required some bravery in him to activate and embody and express or do something, and then that would unlock some movement in the other realms for him. um so I think a lot about that. I really, I think I'm really asking myself, like, what am I afraid of?
Dude, I
Yeah,
love that, man. Writing is acting, is directing, is living your life. I
yeah.
mean, in the Kush recording, he sends a transmission and you can replay it and re-deepen. So I've just
Mm,
trained myself to live inside Kush
mm,
transmissions. And then
yeah,
whatever stupid dialogue we have, like lives on the recording. So I'm like getting that all the time. Like,
yeah,
but a
yeah,
lot of the times, man, it feels like what's woven and coming through. I was like, this feels like a masterpiece. And like I want that infusion of art into the expression through us.
yeah.
Yeah, cool, man. Thank you for validating that because I was
Yes,
totally
good.
feeling.
Absolutely.
Johnny,
Cool.
thank you so much, bro, for sharing your beautiful heart and energy and kindness and how you've helped this life and continue to.
Yeah, yeah, nice.
It's so appreciated,
Very
man.
cool.
I was gonna link dramatic healing and your scheduler, and if people, you have group classes as well. Is there a best way?
Yeah, so I have group healings, monthly group healings. Um, and a lot of those group healings are inspired by the work I did with the diamond approach. So some of them are specifically related to practices that we did there. You know, all monthly healings touch something around the Enneagram. You don't need to know anything about the Enneagram, but it's a nice map to kind of help beginners kind of orient, like, oh, there's some of my fixations, there's some of my behavioral patterns. That's my repetitive thinking, just the spinning out of the internal monologue, and how to use that as the gateway or the doorway to, oh, here's my deeper nature. Here's some deeper realms and qualities of my spirit that want to show up here. So there's group stuff and, of course, individual stuff. But anything on my website or the scheduler is the best way to get a hold of me, and then
Awesome.
I can let them know more.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
This is
Really appreciate
wonderful.
you inviting me.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. And love your dog, and yeah, it's great that that kind of came up as a moment.
Grace into matter, man.
Yeah.
Just thank you for knowing how to collaborate with it because
Yeah.
that's it, it's all perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Totally. Take care, man.
Take care, brother.